It's time for combat. But before we battle, we cook. So with D&D, combat is a little bit dicey. As an adventure unfolds, sometimes while you look forward to combat, that is the very thing that can slow the adventure down. And I'll show you a kind of simulated round of combat here, which will maybe demonstrate why that is the case. And I'm also going to give you some tips for how to speed it up and to keep everybody engaged in the combat. We're going to be kind of using this cave adventure that I homebrewed called the Hidden Cavern of Wyvern Tor as an example of combat in action. And I'm the DM. I'm surrounded by players. Okay, I'm not, but let's just pretend like I am. Dungeon Master. You've chased the orcs down a dark passage. You go probably 50 feet and then another 30 feet in the pitch darkness. And the narrow passage then opens up and you drop into a cavern. And in that cavern are 4 orcs waiting for you. Roll initiative. So I kind of set up the stage for the combat. I really didn't give the players in this instance an opportunity to come up with some other scenario to avoid combat just for the sake of this conversation. But the important thing to pick up on there is I've set the stage for it, and then I told everybody around the table to roll initiative. That is when they take their 20-sided dice and everybody rolls around the table, including the Dungeon Master, who has to roll for what place the orcs are going to attack in. And so you simply rank. I rolled a 16. And with that, what I do is I actually write here with a dry erase marker the order of the combatants. So maybe, let's say Scrygorn there rolled a 20, so he would go first. McBiddles over there rolled a 14. I rolled a 16. So let's say it goes Scrygorn, Orcs, McBiddles, Ridley over there rolled a 10, and then Rangren right here rolled a 3. So there we have the initiative order. And so when combat starts, that is the sequence that we will go when people roll to find out whether or not their attacks or their actions or whatever it is work. So as the DM, what I will do is go ahead and list the initiative order and kind of keep up with it that way. So I will literally say, Scrygorn, you're up. Orcs go. And then when it's the orcs' turn, I will roll for the orcs. Then McBiddles, someone came and said McBiddles the Great. I can't imagine who that was. And then Ridley would go, and then Rangrim would go. And then we kind of start at the top of the order. And you keep kind of cycling through this initiative until one of these guys, actually, since these are kind of the group members here, so one of these guys decides to disengage, or until these guys get defeated. Okay? So that is initiative. Now, how does the battle actually work? One other thing to keep in mind is if you can get someone else, one of the player characters, to perhaps keep up with the initiative order, if you're the Dungeon Master, sometimes that's helpful. With this lineup, it's not that big a deal because we're only working with one sort of kind of type of non-player character here, orcs. So the hit points will be the same, the armor classes will be the same. But if this is a blend of creatures here, say the orcs and hobgoblins and goblins and maybe an owlbear, then you would have, you know, literally, while they might all go at the same time, you would have like multiple sets of armor classes and hit points to keep up with, and multiple sets of attack dice here to roll. Initiative order. And so we rolled initiative. You've dropped into a cavern, and the orcs are ready to battle. So Scrygorn, what do you do? And so I put it on Scrygorn. What do you do? Do you engage? Do you hide? Do you run? Scrygorn is a fighter, and so certainly Scrygorn will engage. So before the battle even begins, I, as a dungeon master, will actually create a table for the creatures that the group is encountering. In this case, it's orcs. And so I will go, in this case, this is from the starter set, but I will go to the monster manual or the adventure, and you see here a stat block for orc. So I will first jot down the armor class. So the armor class for an orc is 13, so I will jot that down. And let's say there are 4 orcs here. I will create a table. So orc 1, and then orcs have 15 hit points. So actually we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 entities involved in a battle, and I've kind of drawn this little space here because sometimes it's helpful in battles to actually have something physical to look at, where, you know, this actually literally represents, say for example, 5 feet of distance, and you've got characters and they're moving around. Maybe there's an obstacle here, some kind of a boulder, maybe there's a crate here, you know, some kind of a crate they have to kind of hide behind. Who knows what else? A table. You know, there's different ways that you can sort of set up the adventure to kind of create an opportunity to use the physical environment to enhance it. But just for our purposes, this is what I start with. I found that this helps speed things along quite a bit if I just jot this down. So Scrygorn, the fighter, will go first, and so he will roll his 20-sided dice. And he rolled a 10, and so for this simulation, let's just pretend that he doesn't have any real modifiers to add to that, since I don't have his player sheet in front of me. And so the armor class for an orc here is 13. So Scrygorn missed by rolling a 10. Okay, and then it's the orc's turn. And so Scrygorn might say, well, I lunge at the orcs with orc number 1 with my greatsword. And so he lunged, he rolled a 10, and he missed. Whoosh, went right over the orc's head. And now it's the orc's turn. So what I will do is, because there are 4 player characters, I will grab a 4-sided dice here, little pyramid looking guy that is so fun to step on, and I will number the 4 players a number of this dice here. So we'll call him number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And this relates to the number on the dice that I roll to find out which orc attacks which person. And so it'll go like this. A 2 for orc number 1, orc number 2. A 1 for McBiddles, orc number 3. An 8 for Ridley, and orc number 4. A 7, back again for Scrygorn. These orcs are awful. Those were terrible rolls, but that's how quickly it went. All 4 of them just went. All 4 of them attacked different characters. Just so happened, all 4 of them missed because each one of these guys I already know off the top of my head have armor classes that are greater than 15. And so then it goes to McBiddles the Great. McBiddles with his flowing hair and luxuriant, some say purple, some say blue, robe, that silken flowing behind him, casts a spell. And so then he will say, I cast, maybe he casts a spell that is a cone that is broad enough to capture, all 4 of those guys. And so he will roll. This red dice is brutal. That is a 1. It's a critical fail. That means that when McBiddles went to cast his spell, perhaps he stepped on his robe and did a faceplant. That's always fun. Next up would be Ridley the Rogue. He says, I'm not rolling the red dice. I'm going to roll this blue one. And he goes, I attack orc number 1 with my rapier. And he rolled a 5. Good grief. Missed. And then Rangram the handsome dwarf, she says, I attack orc number 4 with my, my warhammer. A 12. Well, their armor class is 13. So we've gone through a whole round now of combat, and no one has hit anyone. Back to the top of the order, Scrygorn. I'm going to lunge at number 1 with my greatsword yet again. Missed. And then we're back to the orcs, and I will do the same thing to see who attacks who. Now this is pretty rare. Normally someone's hit someone by now. What's going on is I'm not adding any ability modifiers to any of these rolls. So let's say, for example, let's start from the beginning. Let's say Scrygorn with the greatsword has a +6 advantage. He's proficient, he's a higher level fighter, and he has a big strength ability modifier. So we're going to add +6 to this. So he says, I'm going to attack orc number 1. So 15 +6 is 21. The armor class of the orc is 13. Boom, that hits. So let's say his damage is 2d8 +2. So he does 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. +2 is 14. And so then I will literally subtract 14. Orc number 1 is down to 1 hit point. Okay? And that's kind of how combat goes. So if you kind of get your dice moving, and you get this table set up kind of right at the beginning of combat, maybe even take a small break, give you enough time to kind of set up the table, and then when you roll through each of the characters, then it kind of moves pretty fast. And then as a dungeon master, I can keep up, pretty quickly with which one, let's say it goes -5, which one gets kind of dealt with, and then we deal with what's left. Okay? So that is the essentials of combat. So that's sort of it for combat. The thing to keep in mind is don't get too bogged down. It's easy to. So if you kind of help yourself out by creating tables like I just went through, keeping the dice moving, and then encourage your player characters to kind of piggyback off of what the preceding character did. And just build off of that momentum and try to get the energy up, and if you have roll a critical fail, if you roll a 1, don't be afraid to say, I dart out at the creature and trip on a root and go flying face first. I mean, just ham it up, have some fun. So that's combat. Have a good time. Alright, so if you like that video, please subscribe, hit the button right there, give it a thumbs up, share it, tell your friends. There's going to be a lot more D&D where that came from. That was part 4, combat.